I told you could do it. Good job. It was beautiful to see you all. I want to say that flower communion, I think, traces that balance between the beauty of the individual and the beauty of the individual in community. And if I think about this year and last year and this ceremony that binds us as rituals do each year to the others, I think that perhaps it's true that if last year's truly had to celebrate our individuality a little bit more, then this year we are grateful to be able to recognize the importance of community support. Now, last year we recognized it too, and we were grateful to gather as we could, and so many of you sent in pictures of flowers, and it was a wonderful thing to do. But no matter what our situation was, even if we were crowded in with too little personal space last year, we had to use our own inner resources to get through that year. And this year, in 2021, flower communion, perhaps the note in the chord, is sounded a little bit louder on the note of community, because we are in that liminal space that Miranda spoke of, that time of being neither here nor there. And it's in this time that we have to think about community and how much we appreciate one another. As we celebrate this ritual as people who understand a little bit better than we did perhaps a few years ago, the horror and powerlessness that people feel who witness the rise of hate in a nation, we must remember to emphasize the community a little more. We must remember that one of the things that allowed that hate to rise was the ability for people to not understand their connections, to break their connections with one another. Today, we have a little more appreciation, I think, I know I do, for the totality of the vase, not just our own face in stark relief, and perhaps that is the message. This service in which we honor our beloved Bridgers, and I do invite you to remember that there are cards to sign for them after the service. It's important that we honor that we have work to do to continue to make those sacrifices we may need to make to ensure that the world that they inherit is a better world than the one they may be looking at right now. We often honor Norbert Čapek, but this year, as we're all struggling in our own ways with this time of liminal space, I want to also lift up Maya Čapek, who actually brought this flower communion to us in this nation. Maya, who left Prague knowing that she would never see her husband again, though she only learned of his death in the concentration camp after the war. Maya, who in her time of waiting was also ministering, who helped not only lead a church here in the United States, but actually she led and revived a church that had collapsed and brought it back to life as a congregation. Maya, who in her ministry in that church brought this flower communion to it and thus to the other churches around it, and thus brought this beautiful ritual to us in this nation. Of Maya, who served the North Unitarian Church, my colleague Dan Harper wrote, "Even though Maya Čapek must have been worried sick about her husband, Norbert, who had been taken into custody by the Gestapo, she managed to help revive the North Unitarian Church. Her ministry from 1940 through most of 1943 was around the work of working with young people in the church and introducing the flower communion service, which was an innovation of the Prague Unitarian Church. Indeed, the flower service or flower communion has spread to nearly every Unitarian Universalist congregation in North America, and we have covenanted to firm principles, one of which states that we will promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We need to do this in the spirit of Maya Čapek, who lived out this principle in her life, resisting Nazi invasion of Czechoslovakia, resisting a military invasion that destabilized Europe, and also the military invasion that threatened to extinguish the flickering light of a world community that had begun to shine in the early 20th century. So as we celebrate this beloved ritual, let us take a moment again to look around at the others around us. to look particularly later when we gather at our younger folks, to lift up this world that our bridgers will step into at this point in our lives. And may we continue and redouble our commitment to sound this chord that is important, that we remember that we work for the whole and the good of the whole, and that it is a great joy to celebrate both the individual and the individual in community, the flowering of our own hearts and the collective flowering of a greater love between us.